The studio lights blazed down on the set of Good Morning America, the air buzzing with anticipation. The audience, a mix of tourists, die-hard fans, and curious onlookers, filled the seats, their chatter a low hum against the sleek backdrop of the Times Square studio. Cameras whirred softly, their lenses trained on the empty guest chair where Tom Cruise, Hollywood's perennial action star, would soon sit. The clatter of a stagehand's clipboard echoed faintly, and the scent of fresh coffee wafted from the cruise table. Today's episode promised to be electric. Tom was here to promote his latest Mission Impossible installment, and the crowd was ready for his signature charisma. But no one, not the audience, not the producers, not even Michael Strahan himself, could predict the firestorm about to erupt. The opening chords of the show's theme music filled the air, and Michael Strahan strode onto the set, his megawatt smile lighting up the room. At 6 feet 5 inches, the former NFL star turned morning show host towered over the stage, his tailored suit pristine, his voice warm and commanding. "Good morning, America!" he boomed, met with enthusiastic applause. The crowd was already eating out of his hand, their energy feeding the live broadcast's pulse. Strahan settled into his chair, flanked by co-hosts Robin Roberts and George Stephanopoulos, both of whom exchanged quick, knowing glances. They'd done this dance before. Strahan loved to push boundaries, to dig just a little deeper than expected. Today, with a guest like Tom Cruise, that instinct felt like a lit fuse. Hook, what happens when a Hollywood legend faces a host who doesn't know when to stop? Stay tuned, this moment will leave you speechless. Tom Cruise entered to a roar of applause, his trademark grin flashing as he waved to the crowd. At 63, he still carried the boyish charm that had made him a global icon, his navy blazer hugging his athletic frame. He shook Strahan's hand firmly, nodded to Roberts and Stephanopoulos, and settled into the guest chair, exuding confidence. The audience leaned forward, phones already out, capturing every move. "Tom, it's great to have you here," Strahan began, his tone friendly but with a glint in his eye that hinted at mischief. "This new Mission Impossible, you're still doing your own stunts, jumping off cliffs, defying death. How do you keep that fire going?" Tom chuckled, leaning back. "It's about the audience, Michael. I do it for them, for the thrill, the story. I want people to feel something when they leave the theater." His voice was steady, earnest, the kind of sincerity that had won over generations of fans. The crowd clapped, a few whistles piercing the air. Robin Roberts nodded approvingly, but Strahan's smile tightened, just enough to notice. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the desk, his fingers steepled. "Sure, but let's be real, Tom. You're not a kid anymore. Some folks say you're pushing too hard, chasing youth, maybe even running from it. What do you say to that?" The studio went quiet. A few audience members shifted in their seats, the air suddenly thick. Tom's smile faltered for a split second, but he recovered quickly, his eyes locking onto Strahan's. "I don't see it that way," he said evenly. "It's not about age, it's about passion. I train hard, I prepare, I deliver. Always have." The crowd murmured in agreement, but Strahan wasn't done. He tilted his head, his tone turning sharper. "Passion's great, but there's talk, you know, people saying you're risking too much, maybe even endangering others on set with these stunts. Reckless, they call it. Any truth to that?" Hook, did Michael Strahan just cross a line? Tom Cruise's response will shock you. Keep watching to see how this unfolds. Robin Roberts coughed softly, her fingers tightening around her pen, while Stephanopoulos glanced at the control booth, where a producer's silhouette was visible, pacing frantically. The audience's energy shifted, some leaned in, others exchanged uneasy looks. Tom's jaw clenched, a subtle flex of muscle under his tanned skin. "Reckless?" he repeated, his voice low but firm. "Michael, I've been doing this for 40 years. My team, my crew, their family. Safety is everything. Those rumors? They're noise, not truth." His words carried weight, but Strahan didn't back down. He leaned closer, his smile now more challenge than charm. "Noise, sure. But you've got a reputation, Tom. Some say you're obsessed, controlling every detail, maybe even stepping on toes to get your vision. Is that passion, or something else? The crowd gasped softly, a collective intake of breath. A woman in the front row clutched her phone, her thumb hovering over the record button. Roberts tried to interject, her voice smooth but strained. Let's talk about the movie itself. Tom, tell us about the new story. But Strahan waved her off, his eyes fixed on Cruise. Hold on, Robin, I'm curious. Tom, you're a guy who's always in control, right? Scientology, your image, your sets, everything's curated. Some folks call that inspiring. Others call it, well, let's just say controlling. What's the real Tom Cruise like? The studio froze. The word Scientology hung in the air like a guillotine. Tom's eyes narrowed, his posture stiffening. The audience was silent, save for the faint hum of a camera adjusting focus. A stagehand dropped a pen, the sound sharp against the tension. Tom leaned forward, his voice steady but laced with steel. Michael, I came here to talk about a movie, not to be dissected. My beliefs, my work, they're mine. You want to talk about control? How about controlling the narrative here, huh? The crowd erupted in scattered applause, but Strahan didn't flinch. He leaned back, his grin widening, as if he'd just landed a touchdown. Oh, we're just getting started, Tom. Let's talk about that narrative. Hook, Tom Cruise is pushed to the edge, but what he says next will leave the entire studio in stunned silence. Don't miss it. The air crackled with unspoken challenges. Roberts shifted uncomfortably, her smile tight, while Stephanopoulos scribbled something on a notepad, his face unreadable. In the control booth, the producer's voice hissed through an earpiece. Ease up, Michael, ease up! But Strahan was in his element, his eyes gleaming with the thrill of the chase. Tom, meanwhile, sat rigid, his fingers gripping the armrests, his gaze unwavering. The audience could feel it. The storm was coming, and no one could stop it. What would Tom say next? Would he walk out, or would he fight back? Every eye was on him, every phone ready to capture the moment that was about to go viral. What will Tom Cruise do when pushed too far? Will Michael Strahan regret his words? Share your thoughts in the comments, and stay tuned for part 2 of this explosive clash. The Good Morning America studio was a pressure cooker, the air thick with tension as Tom Cruise stared down Michael Strahan. The audience sat frozen, their phones raised, capturing every second of the standoff. The faint hum of cameras and the distant clatter of a stagehand's clipboard were the only sounds piercing the silence. Tom's fingers, still gripping the armrests of his chair, twitched slightly, his knuckles widening. Michael Strahan, unfazed, leaned back with a smirk, his eyes daring Tom to respond. Robin Roberts and George Stephanopoulos exchanged a glance, their faces taut with unease, while in the control booth, a producer's voice crackled through an earpiece. Michael, dial it back, now! But Strahan wasn't listening. He was in too deep, chasing the moment that would light up social media. Tom, come on! Strahan pressed, his voice dripping with a mix of charm and provocation. You're a guy who's built an empire, movies, image, everything. But some say it's all a facade. The stunts, the smile, the intensity, is it real, or is it just the Tom Cruise brand? The crowd gasped, a low ripple of shock rolling through the studio. A woman in the third row whispered to her friend, Did he just say that? Her phone was already recording, the red light blinking like a warning. Tom's jaw tightened, his blue eyes flashing with a fire that hadn't been seen in his earlier charm offensive. He leaned forward, his voice low but cutting. Michael, you're sitting there throwing darts, but you don't know me. You don't know what it takes to do what I do. You want to talk facades? Look at this show, pushing drama for clicks. That's the real game here. Hook, Tom Cruise just called out Michael Strahan on live TV, but what happens next will leave you speechless. Keep watching. The audience erupted in a mix of cheers and murmurs, some clapping for Tom's defiance, others stunned by his audacity. Robin Roberts tried to steer the ship, her voice calm but firm. Okay, let's take a step back. Tom, tell us about the heart of this new mission, Impossible. What's driving Ethan Hunt this time? But Strahan cut her off, his grin widening as he leaned closer to Tom. No, no, Robin, let's stay real. Tom, you're dodging. People talk, your faith, your control, your need to be the guy who never fails. Is that who you are, or is it just the script you've written for yourself? The word faith landed like a grenade, a direct jab at Tom's Scientology beliefs. The studio went dead silent, the kind of quiet where you could hear a pin drop, or the faint buzz of a camera zooming in. Tom's face hardened, his posture shifting from defensive to commanding. He stood up, his movements deliberate, the scrape of his chair against the floor echoing in the hushed studio. The audience leaned forward, phones trembling in their hands. Michael, he said, his voice steady but laced with controlled fury. I came here to talk about a movie, to share something I poured my heart into. But you're digging for dirt, trying to tear down what you don't understand. I've spent my life building stories that lift people up, that inspire. What are you building here today? The crowd burst into applause, some standing, others whispering in disbelief. Strahan's smile faltered, just for a moment, but he recovered, leaning back with a forced chuckle. Tom, it's just a question. No need to get heated. Hook, Tom Cruise is standing up, and the studio is on edge. Will he walk out, or will he unleash something even bigger? Don't look away. Robin Roberts jumped in, her voice urgent. Let's keep this respectful, everyone. Tom, we love your passion. Let's talk about the film's stunts. But Tom wasn't sitting back down. He paced a step, his eyes scanning the audience, then locking onto Strahan. Respect, he repeated, his voice rising. That's the word, Michael. Respect for the work, for the people who show up, for the audience out there. He gestured to the crowd, who erupted again, some shouting his name. You want to talk about my life? Fine. I'm a man who believes in something bigger than myself. I've never hidden that. But you don't get to twist it into a soundbite for your ratings. The studio was chaos now, half the audience cheering, the other half frozen, phones capturing every word. In the control booth, the producer was gesturing wildly, mouthing, "Cut to commercial!" But the cameras stayed rolling, the red lights unblinking. Strahan, sensing the moment slipping, tried to regain control. Tom, nobody's twisting anything. We're just having a conversation. But his tone was weaker now, his confidence shaken. Tom stopped pacing, his gaze piercing. A conversation? No, Michael. This is an ambush. And I'm done. He turned, his blazer catching the studio lights as he strode toward the exit. The audience gasped, a collective "No!" rising from the back. Roberts stood, her hands outstretched. Tom, please stay. Stephanopoulos, usually stoic, looked genuinely rattled, his pen frozen mid-scribble. The cameras swiveled, catching Tom's silhouette as he reached the edge of the set, the clack of his shoes against the polished floor like a metronome of defiance. Hook, Tom Cruise is walking out, but what he does next will go down in TV history. Can Michael Strahan salvage this disaster? Stay tuned for the explosive finale. The studio was a storm of emotions, shock, awe, and a strange kind of reverence. A man in the front row whispered to his wife, "This is going viral." The producer's voice screamed through the earpiece, "Get him back! Get him back!" But Tom was already at the door, his hand on the handle. The audience held its breath, waiting for the final moment that would define this clash. Would he turn back? Would he say one last thing? Or was this the end of a moment that would burn through the internet like wildfire? Will Tom Cruise leave Michael Strahan in the dust? What will this mean for both men? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't miss part 3 of this unforgettable showdown. The Good Morning America studio was a frozen tableau, every eye locked on Tom Cruise as he stood at the edge of the set, his hand on the door. The air was electric, charged with the weight of a moment that felt like it could reshape television history. The audience, a mix of stunned fans and curious onlookers, held their breath, phones trembling in their hands, capturing every second. The faint hum of cameras and the distant clatter of a stagehand's dropped pen were drowned out by the pounding silence. Michael Strahan, his smirk gone, sat rigid behind the desk, his fingers gripping the edge as if anchoring himself against the storm. Robin Roberts stood halfway out of her chair, her voice soft but desperate. "Tom, please, let's talk this out." George Stephanopoulos, usually unflappable, stared wide-eyed, his notepad forgotten. In the control booth, the producer's frantic gestures were a blur, her voice hissing through earpieces. "Stop him! We can't lose this!" But Tom Cruise, Hollywood's titan, wasn't turning back, or was he? Hook, Tom Cruise is inches from walking out, but what he does next will leave the studio speechless. "Don't blink, this is about to go viral." Tom paused, his hands still on the door, his silhouette framed by the harsh studio lights. The audience leaned forward, a collective gasp rippling through the crowd. A woman in the front row clutched her phone so tightly her knuckles paled, the red record light blinking like a heartbeat. Tom turned slowly, his blue eyes blazing with a mix of fury and resolve. He stepped back toward the center of the set, each footfall deliberate, the clack of his polished shoes echoing like a drumbeat. The camera swiveled, zooming in on his face, jaw set, lips tight, but his gaze steady, unwavering. "You want a conversation, Michael?" he said, his voice low but resonant, cutting through the studio like a blade. "Let's have one. But not your way. Not with cheap shots and gotcha questions. Let's talk about something real." The crowd erupted in cheers, some standing, others shouting his name. Strahan's face twitched, his confidence crumbling under the weight of Tom's presence. He opened his mouth to respond, but Tom raised a hand, silencing him without a word. "I've spent 40 years in this business," Tom continued, his voice rising, each word deliberate. "I've poured my soul into every role, every stunt, every story, not for fame, not for money, but for the people in this room, the people watching at home. You want to talk about control? Fine. I control my work because I respect it. I respect the crew who risk everything with me, the fans who show up, the stories we tell. But you, Michael, you're using your platform to tear down, not build up. And that's where you lose me." Hook, Tom Cruise just turned the tables on Michael Strahan, but can he deliver a knockout blow? Keep watching to find out. The studio was a cauldron of emotion. A man in the back row wiped a tear from his eye, his phone still recording. A teenager whispered to her friend, "This is insane." Robin Roberts sank back into her chair, her hands clasped tightly, while Stephanopoulos scribbled furiously, as if trying to capture the lightning in the room. Strahan, for the first time, looked small, his broad shoulders slumping as the crowd's cheers drowned out his usual charisma. He tried to interject, his voice strained. "Tom, I'm just asking what people want to know." But Tom cut him off, stepping closer, his intensity filling the space. "No, Michael. You're asking what gets clicks. You're not after truth, you're after a moment. And you know what? You got one. But it's not yours. It's mine." The audience roared, a wave of applause crashing over the set. Strahan's face flushed, his hands fumbling with a pen as he struggled to regain control. In the control booth, the producer's voice crackled. "Go to commercial. Now!" But the camera stayed locked on Tom, the red lights unblinking. He turned to the audience, his voice softening but no less powerful. "I'm here because I believe in stories. I believe in the power of art to lift us, to challenge us, to make us feel alive. If that's a crime, I'm guilty. But I'll never apologize for who I am or what I stand for." He paused, his eyes scanning the crowd, connecting with every face. "And neither should any of you." Hook, Tom Cruise just dropped a truth bomb that shook the studio. But will he walk away for good? The final moment will leave you stunned. The crowd was on its feet now, clapping, cheering, some openly crying. A woman in the third row shouted, "We love you, Tom!" as her friend filmed, tears streaming down her face. Strahan sat frozen, his smile gone, his eyes darting to Roberts for rescue. She tried, her voice gentle but firm. "Tom, we appreciate your passion. Let's end on a positive note. Tell us about the movie." But Tom shook his head, a faint smile breaking through his intensity. "I'm done here, Robin. I said what I needed to say. With that, he turned and walked off the set, his strides purposeful, the doors swinging shut behind him with a final, resounding thud. The studio fell into stunned silence, the air heavy with the weight of what had just happened. Phones lowered slowly, as if the crowd couldn't believe it was over. Strahan forced a laugh, his voice shaky. Well, folks, that's live TV for you. But the audience wasn't with him. Some booed softly, others whispered among themselves, already uploading clips to X. Roberts jumped in, her professionalism a lifeline. We'll be right back after this break, she said, her smile tight as the cameras finally cut to commercial. In the control booth, the producer collapsed into a chair, muttering, "This is going to be everywhere." And it was. By the time the show resumed, the moment was already trending, clips of Tom's speech flooding X with hashtags like hashtag Tom Cruise walks and hashtag Strahan burned. Commenters were divided. Some praised Tom's stand for authenticity, others called him oversensitive, while a few questioned Strahan's motives. Hook, the studio is in chaos, and the internet is on fire. But what does this mean for Tom Cruise and Michael Strahan? Don't miss the fallout. In the days that followed, the clash dominated headlines. Variety ran a piece titled, "Tom Cruise's GMA exit, passion or PR?" While ex-users debated whether Strahan had crossed a line or simply done his job. Tom's speech, particularly his defense of art and respect, struck a chord, inspiring fan edits and think pieces about authenticity in Hollywood. Strahan, meanwhile, faced backlash, with some calling his questions reckless, though his supporters argued he was just sparking real talk. The Mission Impossible film saw a surge in buzz, with ticket pre-sales spiking, a testament to Tom's enduring draw. But the deeper impact was personal. Tom's refusal to be baited became a rallying cry for standing firm in one's truth, while Strahan's missteps sparked conversations about the ethics of provocative journalism. Who was right? Did Tom overreact, or was Strahan out of line? Should a platform be used to challenge or to uplift? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let us know, would you have walked out or stayed to fight? Subscribe for more stories that spark debate, and don't miss the next chapter in television's most unforgettable moments.